Elite Facts presents
10 insane military weapons using animals.
10.
Greek war dogs. Although dogs are widely used in wars nowadays, they aren't exactly weapons. In ancient Greece, however, warrior dogs might have been some of the most fierce opponents on the battlefield. In 7th century BC, the Greek city of Magnesia began to supplement their military forces with trained mastiffs, which can grow up to 250 pounds. They would send the dogs into battle first in order to break up the troop formations, with the soldiers following behind to take advantage of the chaos. It may sound cruel, but keep in mind that these dogs were often treated like any other soldier, even to the point to where they were fitted with suits of spiked armor to protect them in battle.
9.
Hannibal's snake bombs. As any historian will tell you, Hannibal was a pretty decent military general. His strategic genius played a decisive role in the Punic Wars and put a huge thorn in Rome's side for years. Hannibal is probably most famous for leading an invasion force across the supposedly impassable Alps to attack Rome from inland where they least expected it. But his most bizarrely creative strategy was yet to come. Years after the Punic Wars, Hannibal was staging his own battle against the king of Pergamon. It was a boat battle and Hannibal was outnumbered, but he came prepared. He had already figured out which ship carried the king, so as soon as his ships were in range, he immediately began launching jars full of venomous snakes directly onto that one ship, ignoring the rest of the fleet. The king freaked, turned, and fled, and the rest of the ships followed.
8.
Sunshine Project. In 1994, the U.S. Air Force started an initiative to develop non-lethal weapons for use in combat. One of the proposals was entitled Harassing, Annoying, and Bad Guy Identifying Chemicals. The entire report identified several possible ways to drop chemical bombs on the bad guys that wouldn't kill them, just sort of make them annoyed. For example, one such bomb would contain pheromones to attract bees or wasps to sting the enemy soldiers. Another chemical would inflict the enemy with, quote, severe and lasting halitosis. And finally, category number 3 suggests using strong aphrodisiacs that, quote, caused homosexual behavior. In other words, the Air Force at one point considered making a gay bomb.
7.
Pigeon-guided missiles. Another misguided World War II idea, Project Pigeon was a military plan to place pigeons inside the nose cone of a missile in order to guide it towards the right target. This was before the era of guided missiles, and it received a lot of attention from the U.S. military. The plan was to create a specialized nose cone that would fit onto a Pelican missile. Each cone had 3 compartments that would house trained pigeons, and a screen that showed the path of the missile. As the missile fell towards its target, the pigeons would peck at the screen and align the missile in the right direction. The pigeons were trained beforehand to recognize the target, so if it was off-center, such as when the missile veered off course, the controls would correct until all 3 pigeons were pecking at the center of the screen, keeping the target dead center ahead.
6.
The USSR Humanzee Army. In the 1920s, Joseph Stalin set in motion a plan to create a race of super soldiers by crossing human and chimpanzee genetics. Records of the experiments suggest that he only used 3 chimps for the insemination project, trying to use human sperm on a chimp, although he brought 10 others back to Russia with him. The next stage of the experiment involved using ape sperm to impregnate a human female, but from what we can tell, it never happened because the only reproductive age ape they had access to died before they could get started.
5.
AntiCommunication Falcons. Before long-distance communication was widely available, homing pigeons were often used to send messages. In World War II alone, the UK used an estimated 250,000 homing pigeons to discreetly get messages out from troops behind enemy lines, especially in situations where they couldn't use radios. But since pigeon technology isn't exclusive to any one army, the Germans were sending messages via pigeon as well. So the British upped the ante by training a small force of peregrine falcons to patrol the coast of Great Britain and intercept outgoing homing pigeons. The project appears to have been successful, and at least 2 enemy pigeons were captured alive.
4.
ChickenPowered Nukes. In 1957, at the height of the Cold War, Great Britain hatched a plan to bury a series of nuclear warheads throughout Germany as a failsafe in case the Soviet army attempted to invade Europe from the east. Immediately, they encountered a problem. The winter temperatures of the North German plain, where they planned to bury the nukes, got way too cold for the bomb's electronics to function. So Britain's best military scientists went to work and came up with the most ridiculous idea ever: chickens. They said chickens would produce enough body heat to keep the electronic circuits warm. With the weak supply of food, the chickens would stay alive long enough to keep the bombs in working order.
3.
Genetically modified bomb sniffers. One of the most visceral reminders of previous wars is the presence of uncounted landmines scattered across old combat zones. These mines present a real danger to civilians, and it's estimated that at least 70 countries still have forgotten mines buried beneath the soil. Clearing away mines with human labor is time-consuming and deadly, so animals are often used for the purpose, like monkeys. But like humans, monkeys are still heavy enough to accidentally trigger a mine, which is why a genetically modified mouse that will be able to work with soldiers to accurately clear out more than 300 square meters of land in just a few hours is happening. The mice are modified to be able to detect scents 500 times fainter than normal mice and are small enough that they won't accidentally set off any mines in the process, potentially saving thousands of lives.
2.
Project X-Ray, the Bat Bomb. During World War II, military scientists on both sides of the struggle were actively searching for ways to get the upper hand. One idea that came from the US was the Bat Bomb, codenamed Project X-Ray. The Bat Bomb consisted of a large empty bombshell which was packed full of hibernating bats. At a certain altitude, the bombshell would open, and the bats, woken up by the warm air, would swarm out by the thousands. Each bat had a small charge with 17 grams of napalm attached to it. When the bats landed on the trees and houses of Japan, the tiny bombs would ignite and set everything on fire. The project was, at one point, one of America's main strategies, and thousands of Mexican free-tailed bats were imported for the cause, but it was eventually shut down to invest more money in the atomic bomb.
1.
Antiterrorism Dolphins. Since the 1960s, the U.S. Navy has had an active branch dedicated to one purpose: training sea creatures for war. If that sounds awesome, that's because it is. Most commonly, bottlenose dolphins are trained to detect underwater mines and then alert a nearby patrol of their presence. In Seattle, dolphins and California sea lions are also trained to detect human intruders. When a dolphin spots a swimmer, it will swim to the nearest Navy boat, after which a sea lion will approach with a metal cuff and lock it around the intruder's leg. Truly. The Soviet Union also supposedly had a military unit for wartime marine animals and would train dolphins to attack enemy ships by differentiating between the sound of the ship's propellers.
Don't forget to like us and subscribe for more elite facts.